Promenade Peak or Rivergreen, which should you go for? Hello everybody, I'm Sophia, and as most of you know, both of these condos are launching at the same time and there's a lot of confusion on the ground. So today we're going to be going through the full prediction of the price list as well as what are the red and green flag units to be looking out for. So without further ado, let's get started. Now first, a quick recap on the location. So both of these condos are located in River Valley. Now for Rivergreen, you are right next to Great Wall MRT as well as very near to the mall as well. And for Promenade Peak, you are a bit closer to the Singapore Riverside. Now why are we even comparing these two condos aside from the fact that they are very similar in location? Now based on the estimated starting price, which we will run through in a bit from developers, there's a very high chance we're going to see a lot of overlapping in prices between the two condos. So while situations like this, when you have two developers competing, are great for you as a buyer if you're looking here because there are a lot of opportunities and they will price attractively, it is also a double-edged sword because it's very easy to get confused and pick the wrong unit. For example, if you have two units that are the same price, one is smaller with a better layout, but another one not so good layout but bigger, which will you go for? So we'll be covering all of that so you know exactly what to do and walk in with a strategy. Next, let's look at the overview. First, we have Rivergreen, which is by Wing Tai. So you'll know them from developments like garden residences. So in total, you're going to have 524 units and this is estimated to TOP around 2030. It also comes with a basement car park. Now do note, interestingly, Rivergreen, even though it's very close to Promenade Peak, it will be under District 9, which is the core central region, so it's counted as part of Orchard, whereas Promenade Peak is just nice over the boundary and will be under District 3 instead, which is considered the RCR, which is Tiong Bahru. Now with such similar location but separate districts, do you think this will impact demand? I'll leave that up to you guys to think about. Now for Promenade Peak, it will also be similarly with 596 units as well as one building with basement car park. This is by All Green, which has done developments such as Sky Suite at Anson. And in terms of TOP, not too long after Rivergreen as well, you're looking at 2031. Next, let's look at the unit mix. So for Rivergreen and Promenade Peak, you're going to notice that there are some differences in the types of units available as well as how they are spread throughout the block. So for Rivergreen, you're going to have a 1-bedroom all the way to 4 bedrooms, so no 5-bedroom here, unlike Promenade Peak, but you have a 1-bedroom, whereas Promenade Peak starts from a 1+ study. Now the bulk of the units here are going to go to the 2 bedrooms, which are over 50%. And do take note of the sizing over here. Later you'll see that for Rivergreen, generally the overall square foot is a bit smaller than Promenade Peak. Now you have some quite interesting sizes like a 980 for a 4-bedroom over here, and even for your 2-bedroom you have 527. Now how the layouts play out, we're going to go through that in a bit as well. Now notice how the units are spread out here. It is quite traditional in the sense that whatever unit type is on your first floor is going to be the same on your top floor. So in terms of pricing, it's a bit easier to predict and how the jump will go about. So next we have Promenade Peak. So again, Promenade Peak at 1-bed plus study all the way to a 5-bedroom. So unlike Rivergreen, there is no 1-bedroom over here. And then you also have a different set and type of units from your 3-bedroom to 5-bedroom onwards, where you have those with private lift that will be quite different. Now see the way that the units are spread out. Now the bottom is all those that do not have a private lift, but the unit types that have been reserved for all the top floors over here. So that will be quite an interesting impact on the pricing as well. And again, looking at the sizing, you will see that it is generally a bit bigger than Rivergreen. So moving on to the site plan, let's do a quick run through. Whereas for Rivergreen, it is quite traditional, where you have most of the facilities at the ground floor, your pool, your tennis court, etc. And of course, the biggest bonus point that most people are looking out is that you have the MRT right next door for Rivergreen. Now, some of the more interesting facilities I would say is they have a pet run as well as a pet wash, so definitely very family friendly gear. In addition, you also have a roof terrace for Rivergreen as well. So moving on to the one for Promenade Peak, this is going to look a bit different. So most of the facilities are placed on the first floor as well, like your pool and your tennis court, but you'll have another 2 levels of facilities, which is level 22 as well as 43. Now the more interesting ones I would say is the fitness level, where you have calisthenics as well as whole horde of gym equipment there, so very fitness centric. And then for your top floor, you also have a viewing deck as well. Now you just look at the way the grey shadows are placed here, you'll notice that they are quite different than Rivergreen. So Rivergreen, you have very traditional, where the smaller units are laid out on both sides here, and then towards the end are the bigger ones. But for Promenade Peak, it almost looks like a jigsaw puzzle. So you're going to have a bit less of a conventional and regular shape layout when it comes to the units here. Lastly, let's look at the estimated starting prices. So these are the latest numbers given by the developer at the point of time of this filming. So in general, you'll see that Promenade Peak again is slightly higher because the layouts are slightly bigger. But looking at both lists, I think it's very clear that both developers here are trying to price sensitively, at least for the initial phase of the launch, to clear some stock before incoming and upcoming River Valley condos come in. So looking at some of the numbers, it was quite surprising to see starting 1.5 at Rivergreen for the 2 bedrooms, because just throw back a couple of months to Parktown's launch, for example, at Tampines. This is the type of price you'll see very close to that for their 2 bedroom. So again, it's a very narrow gap between the OCR and the CCR prices here. Now that being said, these both are high-rise developments, so it'll be interesting to see how they carry the price through all the way to the top floor, and it's very crucial to have a strategy on what is the cut-off price, which we will go through for every single unit type. Now, as we move on to the layouts for both developments, for those that they have the same type, we will compare side by side so that you have some reference. Going into the 1 bedroom, so only Rivergreen has 1 bedroom and both are 420 square feet. So internally, they are quite similar. Now you have one that is in the middle row facing out over here and the other that is at the end. So both have good sized bedrooms that can fit at least a queen size bed, and the living area, you can comfortably put a sofa as well as a dining area. Now, one part of this layout I will give an A++ for is the kitchen, because it's very rare that you see in a 1 bedroom that it has this kind of enclosable looking style of kitchen. Most of the time, it's a long open kitchen. Now, though internally they are very similar, externally there are some differences. For A1, your trellis is going to be a bit bigger, and then for A2, it will be smaller and with minor differences on certain floors. However, this is not counted into your overall square feet, so essentially they are the same. Now moving on to 1+ study. So for this, both Rivergreen and Promenade Peak has. For Rivergreen, your 1+ study is going to be 452 square feet. Now what you're getting extra for that is this study room over here. So I do like how they place the study at the corner at the entrance, because if you really wanted to put a door there, let's say you really need a house shelter or rather a storeroom, you can do that and keep it out of sight. And for the kitchen, it's going to be a bit different. It's longer versus the 1 bedroom over here, but that creates some extra space here, which if you wanted a larger dining table, I believe you can have at least a 4-seater if you wanted to. Now for this, it's going to be in the middle row as well, quite similar to what we saw with the 1 bedder. Now for Promenade Peak, the layout is bigger, 527 square feet for both. Now for them, they've chosen to put the study in the middle instead, which is what you'll see in more traditional 1+ study that have come out in latest launches. Plus point also for AS2, because you have a window in the bathroom, which we're not going to have with the other layouts. And for the kitchen, it's a bit different in the sense that the countertop space is split rather than all tucked into one corner. Placement wise, they both are facing internally right next to each other. Let's first look at the rental, which is crucial for 1 bedrooms. Think about 1 bedrooms in the central area. Do you think a larger portion is buying for investment or own stay? Definitely, you'll see a huge number still is for investment. And if you are one of them, especially with the updated 4-year SSD, there is a chance you'll still need to hold your unit after TOP and rent it out. So it's crucial for you to know this as well as for your future buyer. So how do we estimate that? Looking at a recently TOP development in the area, which is Irwell Hill, also near Great Wall, their 1 bedroom average rental is about 8 to 10 per square foot. So we'll take an average of 9 per square foot to estimate what the rental yield is from the bottom to the top floor. So here we have Rivergreen's 1 bedroom. Now how I've estimated the prices from the bottom to the top floor is to take the 1.2 mil starting 1 bedroom price and jump 0.5% in each floor all the way to the top floor. Now, why this number? If we look at past launches by Wing Tai for Rivergreen and All Green for Promenade Peak, their average jump is about 0.5% per floor. So if we see this pattern repeat here, there's a good chance that our top floor will be at around 1.4 mil. Now that being said, where will I cut off in terms of pricing? I would recommend the 18th floor. And this is because this is the point where we start to see price overlap with the 1+ study at Rivergreen. And of course, if for the same price we can get extra space, that becomes a no-brainer to go for a bigger unit. So moving on to the 1+ study, Rivergreen on the left and then Promenade Peak on the right. Now for Tier 1, the first zone that I will go into purchase first, it will be Rivergreen all the way up to the 20th floor. And the reason for this is at this point, we still see a lot of options below what the starting price of a 1+ study at Promenade Peak will be. Following which, we'll start to see price overlap between Promenade Peak as well as Rivergreen 1+ study, in which I would then go for either the lower floors over here at Promenade Peak, or if you prefer higher floor, all the way until the 34th story roughly for Rivergreen, because that is where I will stop and that's where price starts to overlap with 2-bedroom at Rivergreen. So we don't want our pricing to get too close to the 2-bedroom, because then again, it becomes a no-brainer for your future buyer to go for the bigger unit instead. Moving on to the 2-bedroom. So for 2-bed 1-bath, only Rivergreen will have, and this is sized at 527 square feet. Very similar and the same size to what we just saw for Promenade Peak's 1+ study. Facing wise, they are opposite each other towards here and here. Now internally, what you are going to get for this is an enclosed light kitchen at the side and a proper area for the dining, though I do prefer this B2 layout because the dining area is tucked in a way so it doesn't block your way, much like a dining area might over here. So bedroom wise, 2 good size, and then you have 1 bathroom over here. Now moving on to the 2-bed 2-bath, so both developments have this. For Rivergreen, it is sized at 603 square feet for both, and you're going to have an extra bathroom now over here. Kitchen wise and dining and living area wise, very similar to what we saw with the 2-bed 1-bath, except you'll notice that for BP2 it's actually a bit more staggered in terms of the layout versus BP1. So you're going to have a longer wall over here with your sofa, so that's extra space for you to build storage or even put a side cupboard or table versus the shorter wall that is over here. Now for Promenade Peak, the size is going to start at 657 square feet, and this layout is quite a bit different than what we are seeing at Rivergreen. So for Rivergreen, you have the dumbbell layout where the bedrooms are split on both sides, but Promenade Peak is more traditional. You have 2-bed 2-bath tucked at the side. However, the kitchen is different. It's more of an open concept. For Promenade Peak, your 2-bed 2-bath is going to have 5 different layouts. Now the 4 you see here are very similar to the one we just went through, in the sense that they all have that traditional style of laying out the bedroom towards the side. Now where they are going to differ is the kitchen and the walkway at the entrance. So you'll notice that some are a bit longer where others are a bit wider, and this is where the extra space is going towards. Now moving on to the 2+ study, which you both have. For Rivergreen, it is sized at 657 square feet and it is over here at the corner. Now for the internal, the study is tucked over at the corner, but other than that, it is pretty similar to the 2-bed 2-bath that we saw earlier. Now Promenade Peak, for their study, it's a bit more different, it's quite unique. The study is actually tucked here at the entrance area, but you can kind of have it as a separate place from your other unit by putting a door over here as well. So in the sense that if you are staying with other people and they are inside the unit, you can shut off and have a bit more privacy. However, the downside is anybody entering the unit, they cannot avoid you and they have to walk past your study. Now internally also, the kitchen will all be open, but the way this one is laid out in sort of an L shape, you can build a glass door if you like. So first let's look at the 2-bed 1-bath pricing. So using the same formula that we did with the earlier price estimation in terms of floor jump, I would cut off the 2-bed 1-bath at around the 19th floor. Now this is because this is the point that is roughly 100k less than the 2-bed 2-bath. So we don't want it to be too close. In my opinion, 100k is a healthy gap for extra bedroom. Now if I'm very close to a 2-bed 2-bath, it's very easy to just say in the future for my buyer, I just top up a little bit and I get extra room, and that wouldn't really make sense. So this I would say is the safer zone if you're looking to go for this size. Now for the 2-bed 2-bath, I've included Rivergreen's as well as Promenade Peak, but also Rivergreen's 2-bed plus study, because these are the 3 types that we will see price overlap across each other. Now in terms of which is the first priority, I would go for the 2-bed 2-bath at Rivergreen. Now the reason I cut it off at the 13th floor here is because it is 70k less than Rivergreen's 2+ study. Now again, we want to have some gap from the next biggest unit, because if I'm very close to the study, I might as well just go for the bigger in terms of pricing, and that is how your future resale buyer will think as well. Now the next zone I will go to is to actually jump all the way to the 2+ study at Rivergreen. Now this is because if you look at here, the pricing, you're going to see a lot of overlap with the 2-bed, 2-bath at Promenade Peak. And to me, if I can get extra study, then definitely it's more of a no-brainer. But I've cut it off at number 21 floor over here, because this is where you have a 200k gap to the starting price of the 3-bedroom at Rivergreen. So definitely, if you have a 2-bed plus study, I don't want the price to come so close to the 3-bedroom that again, it is a no-brainer just to go to a 3-bedroom. So this to me is the safe zone. Now for tier 3, I would go for the pink areas. Now the reason why I've cut them off as such, looking at OL Hill's 2-bed, 2-bath medium price, which is 1.9, this is already the accepted price in the area. So if I'm going to go for something like Promenade Peak's 2-bed, 2-bath, or if I really like to get a higher floor of a 2-bed, 2-bath at Rivergreen, these are the floors that I will cut it off at in order to remain near the 1.9 range. Next, we have the 3-bedroom. So for the smallest, it's going to be at Rivergreen at 786 square feet. So some size overlap between the 2+ study and Promenade Peak and here. Now in terms of facing, it's going to be at the corner here. I will say that the third room here is quite a bit smaller than the average size of the bedrooms, and you're probably not going to have much of a view for that. The trade-off is for the extra space, I do think that they quite make use of it to be functional, in the sense that you now have a proper enclosable kitchen that comes with a glass panel also, and this can be ventilated, and you also have a house shelter on top of that. So if you're looking for a stepping stone 3-bedroom where you have functional storage and bedroom, I feel like this does do the job, and the size is going to keep the quantum very attractive, which we'll run through in a bit. Next biggest is going to be 872 as well as 883. So this both very similar, except the walkway is going to differ a bit in terms of the length, but extra what you're getting on top of the smaller one we saw just now is a bigger dining area. So now you can fit up to a 6-seater instead of a 4. Now moving on to Promenade Peak, this is where you'll see a drastic jump in sizes for 3-bedroom to all above 1,000 square feet. And the way they've laid it out is actually quite interesting. So overall, you see that the living room does look a bit longer, but because the square foot is bigger, when I was at the show flat, I do feel that it is quite spacious. And some interesting extra things that the developer has added is that both will come with this kind of sitting nook that's attached to the kitchen. So you have this nice little coffee corner that you can enjoy the view with. On top of that, for this layout in particular, that gives you an extra window where you have more ventilation if you're going to cook. So in terms of the bedrooms, all good sizes, you can fit at least a queen size, similar to Rivergreen, and you also have a house shelter here. Moving on to the 4 bedrooms. Now for Promenade Peak 3-bedroom, there are a few other larger 3-bedroom layouts, but those all come with private lift. So we'll be discussing them in a separate group later on with all the private lift units, as they'll be at a higher price range, only being situated at the top range of floors. Instead, we'll look at Rivergreen's 4-bedroom first, as likely there will be some price overlap with the first 2 smaller 3-bedrooms we just discussed for Promenade Peak. So for Rivergreen's 4-bedroom, it's sized very interestingly at 980 square feet, so not very common for what you'll see nowadays. And what you're getting with that is a proper enclosable kitchen, a good sized dining area, a 6-seater, and now you have extra 4 bedrooms already, right? So actually very similar to the largest 3-bedroom we saw for Rivergreen, except now you have an extra room. Now off the bat, this is not the most luxurious 4-bedroom layout. I think the size is very smartly designed in a way that it's really targeted to be a stepping stone 4-bedroom that has accessible quantum in the River Valley area. How does the pricing compare between the 3 categories? Now the first tier that I'm going to prioritize is the one in yellow, which is the smaller 3-bedroom, starting at 2.25 million, and I would cut it off at around the 25th floor, which is around 2.5 million. Now the reason for this is if you look at other recent launches like Chuan Park, for sizes not too far off on launch day, we're already seeing the 3-bedroom at above 2.5 million. So to be able to have a functional layout at this quantum in the central area, I think it's a no-brainer, and this will definitely move very fast. So you have the chance you can prioritize these few units. Now moving on to the second tier, which is the green zone. This is where I've cut off because that is when price starts to overlap with the larger 3-bedroom at Rivergreen. So at this point, you can choose to go for a lower floor but bigger 3-bedroom at Rivergreen, or the smaller one but at a higher floor. But I have cut it off at around the 2.7 range because this is when you have a 100k gap from the next biggest unit at Rivergreen, which is the 4-bedroom at 2.8 million. However, I would give equal priority to this green tier as with the 4-bedroom if you are able to stretch your budget. And the reason for this is because the 4-bedroom is extremely attractively priced. It is likely you'll be able to get units that are cheaper than the larger 3-bedrooms at Promenade Peak, so you will see some price overlap for the lower floors. Now I've cut it off at around the 3.1 mil range because I would suggest to try and keep it below the 3,300 PSF based on what has already been accepted in the area. Now the last tier, the third one, I will be the pink zone, and that will be the lower floor for Promenade Peak's larger 3-bedrooms. Now if you look at Awell Hill, which is the development at TOP not long ago, you can see their 3-bedroom, even though the layout is slightly bigger, the average accepted price is already about the 3.4 to 3.6 zone. So us being a slightly smaller layout, I would try to cut it off at around 3.2 mil in order for it to still be competitive but still know that we are within an accepted range of pricing. Lastly, we have the private live collection of units at Promenade Peak, which ranges from the 3 to 5-bedroom. Now the pricing for this is going to be a bit different because the lowest floor starting is 44 and it goes all the way up to the 62nd floor. So none of these layouts we're about to go through you can find in a lower floor. So definitely there will be a price premium that comes with it. So how I estimated the pricing here is looking at another development by All Green. Now that's Juniper Peak, where you also have a 3-bedroom and then the floor above becomes a 4-bedroom. Now the PSF jump for that was around 0.8%. So taking the same number and Promenade Peak's 3-bedroom without private lift, the starting PSF with that increment leaves us with this number, which means that 3-bedroom with private lift, starting smaller one is around 3.8 range and the bigger one around 3.9 range. So again, all the way to the top floor, we've done a 0.5% increment as we have with previous layout. Now moving on to the 4 and 5 bedrooms, similarly also. Now naturally with bigger units, usually the PSF will be a bit lower. So what I've done is taken the highest floor PSF estimated and taken down 1% for 4-bedroom in terms of highest floor, highest PSF, and then for the one that is 5-bedroom, taken down 2% of it. And this leaves us with this price range. Let's look at the 3-bedroom with private lift layout first. So of course, when you come in, you have the private lift here, which gives you another service exit at your kitchen area over here. Now, interestingly, they've given a bulk of the space to the middle of the home, where now you have a very wide area, and this makes it feel extremely spacious when you walk in. You even have a dry kitchen over here. So this layout is really going to give that premium spacious feel, which we know at River Valley, especially for own stay family, there is a demand. So here's the estimated pricing for both sizes. Now this is the profitability of Riviera, which has a similar size unit. So you'll realize that for 1,100 to 1,200 square feet, 3-bedroom with private lift is extremely difficult to find at River Valley. So Riviera one, even without a private lift, is able to make this kind of profit, and they are also selling within the 3 mil range. So definitely for this layout, and especially when all are high floor, I think there will be a demand for it. 4-bedroom with private lift, you're going to have 3 different layouts. First will be 1,421 square feet. And the difference with this is the space is taken to the balcony area where you have a wide frontage, and especially only being on the high floors, you're really going to have a nice panoramic view when you come out of your private lift and walk into your home. With the 4-bedroom onwards, you also get a walk-in wardrobe over here, so this really adds to that luxe feel. Now the next layout is also 1,421 square feet, but the main difference is going to be the kitchen and utility area. Because your utility is placed back to back with the kitchen, you actually have a bit more depth coming into the dining area, and this is going to feel a bit more spacious. As with the 1,582 square feet, living room is definitely bigger than the other two that we just saw. It is also deeper. And if you have the chance to see the show flat, what really impressed me was the kitchen. Because now you have this open island over here in the middle, and you can actually open this sliding door here. So it further opens up the space and really makes the home feel huge. Now for the 4 bedroom, same thing, you also get the walk-in wardrobe with 4 good sized rooms. Now my only gripe with these layouts is that it's quite a lot of space allocated to the walkways. But then again, if you're paying this quantum, you also really want that privacy. So I do think it will appeal to the group of people that are looking to get something like this. Now how does it compare to other 4 bedrooms with private live in River Valley? Editing Soph here due to some technical difficulties. Now looking at the other newer developments in the area like Avernia and Riviere, for their 4 bedroom with private lift, it is all above 2,000 plus square feet. Now because the size is bigger, this shoots up their quantum to easily above 6 mil and even above 7 mil. Now by Promenade Peak sizing it this way below 2,000 square feet, this means that there's a good chance you'll be able to get units that are 1 to 2 mil below the prices that have already been done for this unit type. Now in addition, if you notice for Avernia and Riviere, these are some of the first few 4 bedroom units sold during their launch. The units that move first for this profile of buyers are usually the high floor, so we're talking about 30 plus story. So by placing all these premium units above the 44th story, this will definitely generate interest for this profile of buyer. Lastly, we have the 5 bedroom with private lift, which is 1,884 square feet. Now the living area for this is going to be the largest. It is wider and is also deeper as well. You have that same nice kitchen island feature, and for some of your common bedrooms, it will be slightly bigger along with a slightly bigger walk-in wardrobe in the master as well. And that's all for today's video. If you are considering either development, do look out for the important dates which I've listed above. And if you need a personalized review on how you should strategize going down, you're welcome to reach out to me, or if you have any other questions, and I'll catch y'all in the next video.